In this video, we're going to take a look at cross-team collaboration with CloudBees CI. Are you new here? If you are, welcome. And if you are new here, you don't know who I am. My name is Darren Pope, and I'm a developer advocate for CloudBees. As a person that develops Jenkins files to run your CI processes, in the past you may have used steps such as build or trigger remote job in order to fire off other jobs once you've either finished a process or maybe during the process. Sometimes you might need to fire off that job and wait for a response. But I bet a lot of times it's just a fire and forget, and you don't care that you get back any kind of response from the downstream job. There is another feature within CloudBees CI called cross-team collaboration that gives you the ability to do fire and forget without having to hardwire jobs together. So what we're going to do today is we're going to take an introduction look at cross-team collaboration. In future videos, we'll get into more advanced features of both cross-team collaboration and external webhooks. As you can see here, this is the documentation for cross-team collaboration. The link for this documentation will be below this video. As you go through and look at this, here's the basic picture. We have a controller, or it doesn't even have to be a controller, but let's assume these are separate controllers for a moment. We have a controller for the web services team, and we have a controller for the Android team. And let's assume for a moment that anytime we run a job that's on web services team, and we include this event, publish event, when we include this step publish event in a Jenkins file, it's going to send an event, and then we've got another job over here listening for that event, which is going to be based on a trigger. Now, in order to be able to do this functionality, it is not installed by default when you do install suggested plugins with CloudBees. You'll have to go in on the controllers, just the controllers, not the Operation Center. In order to use cross-team collaboration, there are no plugins required for the Operation Center. It's just for your controllers. 3 plugins, up to 3 plugins. There's 2 that are required. One is Notification API. A second one is Pipeline Event Step. And then optionally, but I recommend that you always install it if you have an Operation Center, and you'll see why towards the end of this video. You'll also install Operation Center Notification. That will give you the ability to send messages across controllers. So we're going to go through a demonstration of how to do the installation, the configuration, and we're going to run a few jobs as we go through. Now let's level set where we're at right now. I've got an Operation Center, and I have 2 client controllers. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to log in to the Operation Center. And also, just for reference, I am running 2.263.2.3. Today is Friday, January the 22nd, 2021. So if you're watching this at a future date and things may be a little bit different, look for a more updated video. So I want you to understand where we're at today. And again, if you're looking way out in the future, you might want to see if there's any updated documentation. Again, look at the link. Or if there's an updated video, there will probably be a link there as well. Okay, I've got my Operation Center. I've got a controllers folder, and I have 2 client controllers. So I am using I'm using CloudBees CI Traditional, or CloudBees CI for traditional platforms. The same thing works for CloudBees CI for modern cloud platforms as well. I have 2 client controllers, CM1, CM2, and we're going to start on CM1. The Operation Center, the only plugins that are installed on there are the ones that were installed via install suggested plugins. On CM1, here, the only plugins that have been installed are the ones through install suggested plugins. So by following the instructions that we saw from the documentation, we need to install 3 plugins. Remember, 2 are required, and one is optional, but I always install it. Okay, so we're going to go to Manage Jenkins, Manage Plugins. We are going to go to Available. And I'm going to search for my plugins. So the way I'm going to search for it is notification dash. So then I have Notification API, which is at version 1.5. I have Operations Center Notification, which is at version 1.1. Again, as at the time of this recording. I'm going to check both of these boxes. And then I need to also grab the pipeline event step. And that is currently at version 1.8. So I'm going to do a download now and install after restart. And now I'm going to do a restart. And once this restarts, we will take a look at what we need to do next. In short, once these plugins are installed, the notification subsystem is not automatically enabled. So we'll have to go in and enable the notification subsystem. Okay, now that the controller is back up and running, let's go and enable the notification subsystem. So we'll go to Manage Jenkins, and then under System Configuration, we'll see a new section called Configure Notification. Let's go to Configure Notification. Let's click on Enabled, and you'll notice there are two different router implementations that you can use. To begin with, we're just going to use local only. And what that means is any messages published by publish event will stay within the boundaries of this controller. They will not leave this controller. If we were to switch it to Operations Center messaging, what would happen is the message would be published from this controller, sent to the Operations Center, and then the Operations Center would then send the messages out to every controller that has Operations Center messaging enabled on themselves. We'll look at that again a little bit later. But for now, we're going to start with local only. And that's all that we need to do in order to enable notifications. Okay, very simple. Let's go ahead on CM1 and let's create a job called simplePub. When it all boils down, cross-team collaboration is a pub-sub driven system. We're going to send an event, and somebody's going to be listening for that event. Or some people, in this case, not really people, jobs, will be listening for that event. So I'm going to call this simplePub. It's going to be a pipeline. And again, in a real job, you would not be doing what I'm getting ready to do here, which is putting my job declarative pipeline right here in the script block. But we're going to do this just as an example. All right, let's take a look at this. And this is all documented on the documentation page that we looked at the beginning. We have one step, publish event, simple event. Let me bump that up one more time. Helps a little bit. Publish event, simple event, and then we're giving it a value of hello world. That's it. Very, very simple. So if I go ahead and click on save, and I click on build now, what we're going to see here is it started by admin, and then we get an entry here that says publish event, publishing event notification. So that's just telling us from the simple event, hey, I sent a notification. Remember that this is a fire and forget. If your requirements are that you need to fire and wait, then cross-team collaboration is not the answer for you. If you're using CloudBees CI, the answer probably will be trigger remote job and use trigger remote job over build or instead of build. So right now we've done a simple event. If you've reviewed the documentation, you'll understand that simple event is just that. It is a simple call. So we've now published an event. But since nobody's listening for that event, that message is just dropped because nobody was listening for it. let's go ahead and create another job called simpleSub. Okay, so we'll say simpleSub pipeline. Okay. And let's set this up. So I will grab my example here. And we can see here that much like in the pub job, we had a publish event step. That's sort of what made all of that work. The listening side is all driven through a trigger. And that trigger is listening for a simple match. And this simple match is hello. Now I will need to go back and fix my pub job because it was actually hello world. So let me go ahead and just save this real quick. Actually, you know what? I'm going to fix this. So in our pub job, it was hello world, and I'm matching that right now with a simple match of hello world. Ignore what I was doing right there. Follow what I'm doing right now. So I'm going to click save. Now let me ask you a question. What do you think is going to happen when I run the pub job? Do you think the sub job is going to fire, or is it not going to fire? Now again, nothing up my sleeves here. Let's take a look at the configuration one more time. I'm setting up a trigger to listen for a simple match for an event that has hello world. See that? Lower H, upper W. Again, nothing up my sleeves. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and copy this. I'm going to save this. Let's go back over and take a look at simplePub. Configure. We can see that the publish event, simple event, hello world. Although it matches, I'm going to paste it in. It's exactly the same. I click save. So what's going to happen with simpleSub? Is it going to fire or is it not going to fire? Let's see. Click on Build Now. We can see that Build Now ran, Publish Event Notification went out. Let's go take a look at simpleSub, and we can actually see here that simpleSub has not been executed. Now I have a trigger, but it didn't execute. This is a chicken and egg problem. Because the job has not been run yet, this trigger has not been configured on this job. So just because we saved it does not mean that everything is ready for this job to accept listening for an event. So let's go back to simpleSub. We're just going to do a build now. And we can see that it completed. But let's go take a look at the configuration again. Under the section of build triggers, now we see that this is expanded. If you were to look back in the video when we scrolled past the section a minute ago, this was not expanded, nor was it set up with hello world. In order for this job to listen to events and respond to them, this build trigger, built whenever the specified event is seen, has to be checked, and then you have to set up a trigger condition to where it's met. In our case, that trigger condition is based on a simple match of hello world, which is matched simple match hello world. So when we ran that job, it processed the Jenkins file and then did these settings in the configuration of the job. So a little bit of a chicken and egg. I could have manually done this, but I would rather put the job in there, let it run once, basically fail fast, even though it showed as a pass. The pass was, it was just an echo, so this would always run regardless. But I want you to take a look at one thing before we move on. And I'm just going to click away from it. I'm not saving it. I want you to take a look at the log of when we ran this. This was started by user admin. That was me. I punched the button, build now. Let's go back over to simplePub. And let's do a build now for simplePub. Now we expect simpleSub to react. So we do a build now. can see that it completed. That's good. Let's go back over and take a look at simpleSub. And we can see that number 2 ran, which is 8:01, which you can see up against my clock is 3:01. My time zones are off. Let's take a look at the log. Received hello event. But notice this first line, triggered by event. So this time when we ran simplePub, and since simpleSub was set up correctly to listen for events via the trigger, when the publish event occurred from simplePub, we're on local only, so that message stayed within this CM1 controller, then this job reacted to it. Now again, if you're just doing 2 jobs, a single downstream, you might be thinking, well, using build or trigger remote job is probably just as efficient. And I won't argue with you on that. I mean, that's okay. But think about this from a scalability perspective. Let's say instead of it being just a one-to-one mapping, it's now a pub, being the 1, to an in mapping. Let's say it's something as maybe as basic as, okay, I finished building this jar file or this library, whatever it may be, and I'm going to send a message out saying, hey, I finished building. Everybody else that uses this, that's subscribed to listen for my message, that something got updated on that and I need to rebuild myself, is nearly infinitely scalable. I wouldn't have to hardwire them together as downstreams. It's basically, hey, I'm just listening for somebody to send me a message with this token. And in this case, our token was hello world. Now we can see that simple event is just that. It's simple and it's just an event. But what if you wanted to be able to pass data from one job to another in a decoupled fashion and be able to use that data on the job that was listening for that event? Well, that's where we go on to the next version of publish event, which is then a JSON event. Basically, a simple event is just an opinionated JSON event. So what we're going to do now is we are going to create a jsonPub and a jsonSub set of jobs. So new item, jsonPub, whoops, there we go, pipeline, click OK. And with jsonPub, here is the basic format, again, in alignment with what was in the documentation. The only big change that we see here is that now instead of publish event simple event, it's now publish event JSON event. And within the JSON event, there is a JSON string that is contained within JSON event. Now we're modifying here just a little bit to where it's event hello, unlike where I got confused earlier with hello world. So I have a JSON event that's hello. And if I was to save this and do a build now, we can see here that it looks exactly the same as what we saw with simple event. It's just a publishing event notification. But one extra thing that you can use with a JSON event that you cannot use with a simple event is you can turn on a verbose mode to see what is being sent over. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll go back to jsonPub, go to configure, and let's modify our publish event line to include the verbose statement. Now notice what changes here. Right now, we're passing in a string to JSON event. Watch how this changes. Now we have publish event, we have event JSON event, and we're actually passing in a little bit larger string, and you'll see why after a while. We're saying event hello, and then I'm also passing in color blue. But now here's where the verbose statement is. By default, for JSON event, verbose is false. There is no verbose option for simple event. So if you're wanting to be able to do what we're getting ready to do, you will need to use the JSON event and provide your own JSON string for submission. Effectively, let me go back here real quick. This JSON event with event hello is the exact same thing as what the simple event did for us. When we said simple event hello, that is equivalent to JSON event hello. Just so you can see it in real line here, let's take a look at it. Simple event. These two are functionally equivalent. So simple event is just an opinionated version of JSON event. Okay, that'll be the last time we talk about simple event. So let's go ahead and get our, whoops, I lost it. Let me go grab it again one more time. So again here, we've got our verbose mode turned on to true. By default, it's false for JSON event. And we have a little bit larger JSON string because what's going to happen on our sub side is we want to be able to extract the value of color so we could use that value of color in our job. All right, let's go ahead and save this. And since we've already been through the chicken and egg scenario, you already understand that in order for the sub job to listen, we're going to have to run it once. So let's go ahead and set up a JSON sub job. Go back down here. And this is where the variation from the simpleSub changes, or the simple event part changes. We now are doing a JMess path query against the JSON blob that's being sent over to us, and we're saying, hey, I only want to trigger if the event equals hello. And if you think about what is in our jsonPub job, we have event hello. So let's go ahead and save this. Remember, until we run it once and get our trigger set up, it won't listen and do anything. And in fact, let's go ahead and go back into configure so you can see what we're going to be looking for. Under build triggers, you can see right now that build whenever the specified event is seen is not checked. All right, let's go back to jsonSub, do a build now. This job will run. Notice here it started by user admin. That was me, received hello event. Just remember, taking a look at the job, it's not doing anything to stop us from saying that, but we can now see that the trigger condition is set up. Now, instead of it being on simple event, it is now based on query events. So it'll be event equals hello. And there is the listener. Okay, cool. So now what we can do is run our jsonPub job. Let's do a build now. And, oh, that's it. So the pub job completed. And let's take a look at what we have here with the verbose mode. We still see publishing event notification. That's with or without verbose set. That's always there. But with verbose set to true, the JSON blob that is sent over, and we'll see that this is partially true, here are the, here are the two values that we had set in our JSON, event hello and color blue. But then there's this third value that got injected into the JSON, and it's source. It's a type of JSON build, Jenkins build, not JSON build. The build information was from build 2. Well, this was the second build, if you look right up here. The job was jsonPub, right? jsonPub. It tells me what my Jenkins URL is. CM18080, which is what this is up here. And it's also the instance ID. If you were to go in and take a look at the configuration of this client controller, this is the instance ID of this controller. So here we can see that we have the event that was sent over. We have event and color. Those were the two that we set. And then it injected a source. Let's go back over and take a look at jsonSub. Take a look at jsonSub. We can see it fired at around 8:12. This one was triggered by event. And we see that we received the hello event, which is just an echo. Now, this is sort of it's like, oh, okay, great, Darren. I mean, that's what I expected to see. But I didn't see the values for event or for color, because we really want the value for color. Well, there's a way to extract those values from the event. And that's what we're going to do now inside of jsonSub. So I'm going to jsonSub and configure. Okay. Everything up here stays the same. We are going to get rid of this echo because that's a fairly useless echo. And now what I want to do is I want to grab and show you the complete value that's coming out. Now there's a lot of noise here. There's an echo here that's static, an echo here that's static, and an echo here that's static. What we're doing here is we're using JSON output pretty print just so when it renders in the log, we can see what it is. I don't recommend using this in real life from a rendering perspective. For the example, it's fine. And then if we take a look at this section, which is not sliding for me. Why is it not sliding? Okay, we'll go this way. What we're doing is in order to be able to access these values from this event, we're going to say current build, get build causes, and then we're going to send it to string. So right now, this is going to show us all the data, the full event that's coming over to us in the sub job from the pub job. Let's go ahead and save this. Let's go back and run our pub job one more time. Let's go back over to the sub job. You can see it's pending. Okay, and it's done. And here's the data that I put in there. So remember, these are all hard-coded. This is hard-coded. And here is what came over to us. Notice it is an array with a single object in it. Within this object, there are three attributes. There's an underscore class, an event, and a short description. Now, class is event trigger cause, which is maps back to the triggers when we're looking for event trigger. Short description, triggered by event, not very useful. But let's spend a moment looking at this event. Now, if you think back or go back and look back in the video at the pub job, the only thing that we saw was what was included here. So we see event, color, source. This wrapper is injected as it's published out. Excuse me, let me rephrase that. This is added upon receipt because these are added on receipt into the JSON subjob. It's the better way to say it. So here is all of the data that is available to us in the subjob. Now, this is cool, but all I really want to do is be able to access these values. Let's go back to jsonSub and let's configure this and let's add in a couple more values here just so you can see how we can access it. The first thing that we want to do is we want to just get a handle to just the event part of that blob that came over. So how do we do that? Well, remember that we said current build, get build causes. And we saw from the output of this that this was an array. So I'm going to go ahead and just grab the 0 position of the array, and using dot notation, I'm going to lift event off of there. Remember, we had 3 values within that object 0. There was an underscore class, there was an event, and there was the short description. So let's take a look and see what happens here. Save. Let's go run our pub job one more time. That's probably done. Let's go take a look at our sub job. Number 4, finished waiting. So here we can see the full message received. And then just give me the event part of the full message, right? So all I really wanted to do is just lift out this value, which is what we received right here. What do you think we need to do next in order to get the next 2 values? Meaning event and color. Let's go modify the job. So what we have here, variation on a theme. We're just building out what we've been doing. We have here current build, get build causes 0, event, and then event, because remember there was an event attribute inside of that string, and then event dot color. Just simple dot notation. Let's go ahead and go back over to our pub job. Let's run this one more time. That one's done. Let's go take a look at sub. There's our full message. There's just the event part. And now we have the value of event from publish event is hello, and the value of color is blue. So this gives us the ability to reach into that JSON string that is sent over to us, and we can extract values from that event, and then we could use those values as input to something within this job that has subscribed to this event. But what if you want to be able to move your jsonSub job from CM1 to CM2 because you're trying to rebalance some jobs on your controllers just to maybe add in some performance, add in some extra security just to make things a little more stable. It could be any number of things, the reason why you would want to move a job from one controller to another. So let's go ahead and do that, and let's see what happens. Well, let's think about this for just a second. If I was using either build or trigger remote job, I would have to go in and update all of my jobs. By using cross-team collaboration and by using events, the only thing that I'm going to have to do is make sure that my notification subsystem is configured correctly in order to receive the event. So let's get started. First things first. Let's go ahead and get our notification subsystem set up correctly on both CM1 and CM2. In order to do that, we need to go to Manage Jenkins, Configure Notification, make sure it's still enabled, which it should be, Operations Center Messaging, because what we want to do is we want to be able to publish the event from CM1. The Operations Center will receive that message, and then it will take that message and it will rebroadcast it back to any controllers that have Operations Center messaging turned on, which right now CM1 has it. Let's go do the same thing over on CM2, which this timed out on me, but that's okay. Let's go to CM2, Manage Jenkins, Configure Notification. By the way, I had already installed the plugins on CM2, so we did not need to do that right now. Enabled Operations Center Messaging. So what I have right now is I have CM1 and CM2. Both of them have notifications enabled. Both of them have Operations Center Messaging enabled. So if I send a message from CM1, CM1 is going to receive that message as well as CM2. Let's go back over to CM1. Let's click on jsonSub, and we're going to move jsonSub from CM1 to CM2. And we are going to do a complete move. So this will take just a second. And now that the job has been moved, let's click on close, wait for that to render, and now you can see that we are on CM2. You can also see it in the breadcrumb, and it's jsonSub. Let's click on CM2, so there's jsonSub. Let's go back over to CM1, and we can see jsonPub. We've not made any changes to the jobs. We have enabled notification subsystems on both CM1 and CM2. Remember, we have done nothing on the Operations Center other than the controllers are connected to the Operations Center. No extra plugins are required to use cross-team collaboration on the Operations Center. So now let's click on jsonPub. And let's run it. So we're at 27. That's cool. Let's go over to CM2. There's jsonSub. And we can see it's queuing up. And there we go. Triggered by event. There is the message received. And there is the output of hello and blue. This is great. This is very simple. I did not have to make any changes to my jobs in order to move the sub job to a different controller. Zero. I just needed to make sure that the subsystems were actually active. But beyond that, that's all that we had to do. This also gives me the ability, if I needed to move this job to a different controller at a different time, I wouldn't have to worry about rewiring things together by using trigger remote job. By decoupling the job triggers, we publish an event, and then other jobs, I keep saying people, other jobs are listening for that event. And once they receive the event, they decide what to do based on the trigger. So that's it. Although not a very short overview for an introduction to cross-team collaboration, it gives you the basics of what you need to understand. Now again, the documentation is right down below this video, so you can go and review it and test it out in your environment. In future videos, we'll take a look at some more advanced strategies using cross-team collaboration. If you have any questions about this video or any of the other videos, you can reach out to us. You can follow us on Twitter at CloudBeesDevs, or you can follow me on Twitter at Darren Pope. If this video was helpful for you, go ahead and leave us a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to CloudBees TV yet, why not? Take a moment, click on that subscribe button, and then ring that bell. And you'll be notified anytime there's new content on CloudBees TV. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next video.